Okay, let's unpack this. You've probably seen the headlines. There's a new ceasefire proposal in the Gaza conflict. But when one side says accepted and, the fighting just carries on, what does that really mean? We're doing a deep dive today based on a recent Al Jazeera report. It's titled Hamas Accepts Gaza Truce Proposal as Israel Signals Will Continue War, published August 18th, 2025. Our mission really is to cut through the noise for you. We want to unpack the details of this proposal, look at how the key parties are reacting, the history shaping this, and of course, the absolutely dire humanitarian situation. The goal is for you to get a really clear understanding of what's actually at stake here.
Yeah, what's really fascinating, I think, is how those immediate reactions, often totally different reactions, set the stage. They determine if there's even a path forward. So we'll break down the actual terms of this proposal and really analyze why some are signaling, okay, maybe, while others are saying, no, the conflict continues. Trying to give you that full picture.
Okay, so we've mentioned the headlines. Let's peel back those layers now. What was actually on the table? What did Hamas agree to specifically?
Well, Hamas made quite a significant statement. They told the mediators, the Qataris and Egyptians, that, yes, they've approved this latest proposal.
Approved it.
And crucially, they added their ready to resume negotiations. And the goal of those negotiations, ending Israel's war on Gaza. Nothing less.
That's a big statement. And was this confirmed?
It was pretty quickly, actually. Israeli media, the Times of Israel, Channel 12, they both reported that Israel had indeed received Hamas's response.
Got it. So the response was received. Now, the proposal itself, what are the specifics? What did this source, familiar with the talks, reveal?
Right. The details are critical here. It's not just stop fighting. The proposal outlined a temporary cessation of military operations for 60 days.
60 days. And during that time?
During that specific window, the Israeli army would relocate, the idea being to allow humanitarian aid to actually get in, which, directly addresses that catastrophic crisis we keep hearing about.
And what about the captives? The prisoners? That's always such a sensitive point.
Hugely sensitive. And it's a key part of this. Within that same 60-day period, the plan was for an exchange. Half of the 50 Israeli captives held would be exchanged for Palestinian prisoners.
Half. Okay. That's a significant step, potentially.
Potentially. It's loaded with, It does. If you connect this to the history, the pattern over the last couple of years, it's consistent. There's this fundamental disagreement on the ultimate goal. We've seen it repeatedly. Hamas accepts proposals for ceasefire and release. Israel rejects them. Why? Because Israel insists on continuing the war afterwards.
So that core difference. Hamas wants a permanent end to the war. Full stop. Israel seems to want maybe a temporary truce, just to get captives back and then resume its campaign.
That's precisely the sticking point described. Hamas seeks permanence. Israel seeks a pause before resuming what the source calls its destruction and displacement campaign.
It feels like an almost impossible gap to bridge. Can these two goals ever really align, even temporarily, or are we just stuck in this cycle? We even saw this play out recently, didn't we? That truce in January.
That's right. Brokered by Qatar, Egypt, the U.S., but it was, according to the report, unilaterally broken by Israel in March.
Right. So the track record isn't exactly encouraging for this latest proposal.
It certainly raises that question for you, the listener. Is this really about finding a permanent solution? Or is it just about a temporary pause for specific gains? And what does that mean for what comes next?
And adding another layer of complexity here is the view within the Israeli government itself. It's not monolithic, is it?
Not at all. There are clear signals Israel is pushing ahead with plans, particularly for Gaza City, bombing what was once the enclave's largest urban center.
And Netanyahu.
Prime Minister Netanyahu, he spoke with his defense minister, chief of staff, talked about these Gaza City plans, about the completion of our missions. His assessment that Hamas is under atomic pressure.
Atomic pressure, strong words. And the defense minister.
Defense Minister Katz, yes. He echoed that line of thinking. Said Hamas is only willing to discuss a deal because of its fear that we seriously intend to conquer Gaza City.
So the interpretation there is that the military pressure is working, forcing Hamas to the table?
That seems to be the perspective from Netanyahu and Katz.
Yeah.
But then you have others like the finance minister, Smotrich, far right.
And his view?
Outright opposition to any ceasefire, full stop.
Sure.
He believes Hamas is feeling the pressure, yes, but sees that as precisely the reason not to stop. His quote was, "Precisely for this reason, we must not give in and grant the enemy a lifeline."
Wow. So completely opposing views, even within the top levels of government there, that complicates things massively.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
And there's another angle here, reported by Al Jazeera's Das Salhout, challenges within the Israeli military itself.
Oh, what kind of challenges?
Officials apparently admitting they don't have enough military combat soldiers for the operation.
Mm.
The armies had to issue repeated calls for conscription, both inside Israel and abroad.
That's significant. Does that change the calculus at all? I mean, if the military is stretched.
You'd think it might. It raises real questions about how sustainable their objectives are long-term,
Mm.
maybe creates internal pressure points. Could that push them towards a real solution, not just a pause? But despite these reported issues, the determination to take Gaza City seems firm, even if the exact when and how remain unclear.
Okay, let's shift focus slightly, though it's impossible to separate. The humanitarian situation, the numbers, they're just staggering. Egypt's foreign minister talking about more than 2 million people facing a crisis beyond imagination.
It's hard to even comprehend the scale.
And the death toll, more than 62,000 Palestinians killed in the war, plus the ongoing threat of further mass displacement amid man-made starvation. When we discuss these proposals, how much does this human suffering actually weigh in the negotiations, or is it secondary?
That's a heavy question. The starvation crisis in particular is undeniable now. Since that truce broke down between January and March, the report states Israel's blockade on aid has directly caused famine and starvation.
Famine, not just food shortages, but actual famine.
Actual famine and specific numbers. More than 260 Palestinians have died due to the Israeli-induced starvation crisis.
Yeah.
The UN aid groups, they've been warning about this constantly.
And Amnesty International, they had a recent report too, didn't they?
They did, just on Monday, accusing Israel directly of carrying out a deliberate campaign of starvation, calling it a deliberate policy based on accounts from displaced people, medical staff on the ground. I mean, the language being used points to an absolutely catastrophic situation.
It's almost unbearable to think about amidst all this talk of deals and military plans. So what about the diplomatic pressure? Is anyone trying to push for relief, for a ceasefire because of this crisis?
There are definitely diplomatic efforts. The Qatari Prime Minister and the Egyptian President met in Cairo, their stated aim, to consolidate our existing common efforts in order to apply maximum pressure on the two sides to reach a deal as soon as possible.
Maximum pressure, okay.
And the Egyptian presidency statement was quite clear, too. El-Sisi and Mohammed, they affirmed their rejection of the reoccupation of the Gaza Strip and the displacement of Palestinians. And they stressed the importance of getting a ceasefire agreement.
So regional players are trying to leverage their influence. But does it feel like enough given the scale we're talking about?
Well, that leads us to some expert analysis, which might provide some context. Professor Abdullah Al-Arian at Georgetown University in Qatar offered some, well, pretty sobering thoughts.
Okay, what do you say?
He pointed out that, look, negotiations like this have happened before. But the fundamental issue, in his view, has been a lack of Israeli political will to actually see them through.
A lack of political will?
Yes, and he characterized Israel's actions starkly, saying it has continued to pursue this genocide and taking it to new, horrific, unprecedented levels.
Yeah.
And critically, he noted a lack of international pressure to secure a ceasefire.
Lack of international pressure, that seems key. So if the political will isn't there internally and the external pressure is missing.
Exactly. And Professor Al-Arian drew a historical parallel that's chilling. He said, historically, genocides don't end through negotiated solutions.
Don't end through negotiation. How do they end then, historically speaking?
He argues, they end usually because the party that committed the genocide is forced to end it, usually through external pressure, external intervention of some kind, and that has not happened yet.
That's a very bleak assessment of the potential for diplomacy right now. If his analysis holds, what can we realistically expect from these kinds of efforts?
It really forces us to question the effectiveness of negotiation alone in a situation this extreme. When you look at history, especially conflicts with these kinds of humanitarian outcomes, can diplomacy work without significant, sustained external force being applied? It raises profound questions about how change actually happens in these dire circumstances.
So let's try and pull these threads together for you.
Yeah.
We have Hamas saying yes to a 60-day truce proposal, one that includes aid, prisoner exchanges. At the same time, Israel signals, nope, war continues, plans for Gaza City move forward.
All of this playing out against that backdrop of just unimaginable human suffering, famine warnings, accusations of deliberate starvation policies.
And a history, as we've discussed, of failed talks. Because the core goals, permanent end versus temporary pause, just seem fundamentally opposed. Hopefully getting into these nuances beyond just the headlines gives you a clearer, more informed view of what's really going on.
Yeah, it's incredibly complex. And maybe a final thought to leave you with, building on Professor L. point. If historical patterns suggest these kinds of crises, these alleged genocides, rarely end through negotiation alone, what does that truly imply about the path forward? For everyone seeking an end to this current crisis, and what kind of role, could decisive external pressure actually play in changing things, if any?